New details about the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife. ABC's Zareen Shaw is in Los Angeles with new information about a call she may have made before her death. Good morning, Zareen.
Janae, this is a major development in the timeline deaths of actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy. Officials initially believed she may have passed away as early as February 11th, but we now know she was alive on the 12th. Authorities telling ABC News exclusively that Hackman's wife called a concierge medical service called Cloudberry. A Cloudberry spokesperson saying she was not a patient of the service, but called on the 12th to inquire about what they described as an esoteric treatment, adding that the caller did not display any signs of acute distress. The spokesperson says they called her back twice to follow up, but did not reach her.
Right now, we don't. Of course, we executed the search warrant yesterday, starting on the evening of the 26th, all into yesterday afternoon. And one of our investigators attended the autopsy yesterday. We don't have more information. We're trying to put things together, put together a timeline when the decedents were last seen or spoken to. Of course, we understand that is a challenge because they were very private individuals and a private family. So we're trying to put all that information together right now.
I'm about to have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the legendary Gene Hackman. That's right, Gene Hackman, the two-time Academy Award-winning actor, the guy who starred in The French Connection, Unforgiven, and basically half of your dad's favorite movies, yeah, him. The man was a Hollywood icon. But what if I told you his tragic death, along with his wife Betsy Arakawa, wasn't just some sad, natural ending to a long life, but a twisted conspiracy tied to Hollywood's dark secrets, money, and influence? And it gets crazier, because the deeper you dig, the more you realize this isn't just a family drama. This could be an entire empire of deception, now crumbling like week-old gluten-free banana bread. We're talking about suspicious illnesses, a daughter making sketchy moves, and rumors swirling that Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa may have been silenced for knowing too much. So, what really happened in those final months? Why did the one social couple suddenly disappear from the public eye, only to die under bizarre and highly questionable circumstances? And what's up with Leslie Hackman, their daughter, who went from loving family member to the person at the center of some seriously shady behavior? If you love a good celebrity scandal update, honey, you are in the right place. This isn't just another Hollywood mystery. This is a story where money, power, and hidden agendas come together in a plot thicker than the lotion in Kim K's skincare line. All right, let's get into it. Because the story of Gene Hackman's mysterious death and the suspicious circumstances around Betsy Arakawa's final days isn't just a scandal. It's a window into how Hollywood's elite protects their own power and what happens when someone gets too close to the truth. Let's rewind and look at how it all started. Okay, now before we get all CSI, Hollywood on this case, we need to rewind and really understand who we're talking about here. Because this isn't some random reality TV star. This is Gene freaking Hackman. And if you don't know, now you know. Gene Hackman was a Hollywood leading man of his generation. Two-time Academy Award winner, 5-time Golden Globe nominee, and the star of blockbuster classics like The French Connection, Hoosiers, and Unforgiven. The man wasn't just famous, he was Hollywood royalty. His movies grossed hundreds of millions, and his name, instantly recognizable. We're talking about a guy who spent decades at the top, working with the biggest directors and studios, and pulling in serious money along the way. And while Gene Hackman had that classic tough guy image on screen, off-screen, he was living a pretty low-key life, or so we thought. After retiring from acting in 2004, he moved out to Santa Fe, New Mexico with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. She was not your typical Hollywood wife. Betsy was a classically trained pianist who ran a successful fitness business. Together, they had this picture-perfect, quiet life. Or at least, that's what it looked like from the outside. But here's where things get murky. As Gene's star faded from the public eye, so did his visibility. He wasn't showing up at events. He wasn't giving interviews. Fans chalked it up to him enjoying retirement. And hey, who wouldn't want to kick back after a legendary career, right? But the more time went by, the more isolated Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa became. Neighbors reported that they were rarely seen. Friends said contact was minimal. And yet, his daughter Leslie Hackman insisted that everything was fine. Totally fine. Yeah, we've heard that before. Fast forward to the weeks leading up to their deaths, and things get even sketchier. According to Leslie Hackman, she was in constant contact with her dad, She testified that they were close, that she visited regularly, and he was healthy and doing well. But then, boom, out of nowhere, we find out Gene Hackman had been suffering from advanced Alzheimer's disease and had already survived multiple heart attacks. Like, how does someone not notice that? This wasn't just a cough and sniffle situation. This was a serious decline. And then there's Betsy Arakawa. Her death, officially blamed on a rare rodent-borne illness. Yep, you heard that right. This is a woman who lived an extremely private life, rarely left her tightly secured mansion, and somehow she contracted a disease usually found in, like, remote jungles or something. Experts called it highly unusual, which in Hollywood speak basically means somebody better start asking questions. But the biggest red flag? The estate. Gene Hackman's fortune was no small potatoes. We're talking millions in real estate, royalties still rolling in from his films, investments, and who knows what else tucked away in accounts and assets. And who stepped in to manage it all? You guessed it, Leslie Hackman. Her moves since her parents' deaths have raised more than a few eyebrows. Some properties were sold off in a flash. Personal items disappeared. And questions about how Gene and Betsy died haven't exactly been met with open arms. So here's the million-dollar question, or maybe multi-million. Was this just a tragic end of two Hollywood legends quietly living out their last years? Or is this the messy unraveling of a powerful Hollywood empire, where money, influence, and control trump the truth? Stick with me, because what comes next is where things get really dark. Let's break it all down. All right, let's get into the real meat of this story. Because if you thought the background was messy, just wait until you see what's underneath it all. This isn't just about two deaths. It's about power, money, and what happens when the truth threatens to bring down a Hollywood legacy. Let's start with Gene Hackman's health, because this is where the story starts to smell fishy. According to his daughter, Leslie Hackman, Gene was in great shape. She said he was mentally sharp and physically active, even in his 90s. She told the court that she visited him often, kept up with his care, and everything was picture perfect. But the medical records say otherwise. And not just like a little off. Completely different story. Gene had been diagnosed with advanced Alzheimer's disease, the kind that doesn't just pop up overnight. He'd suffered multiple heart attacks in his last few years. Reports from his doctors described him as severely ill, disoriented, and needing round-the-clock care. Yet Leslie acted like she had no idea this was happening. How does someone go from being healthy to barely functioning without his closest family knowing? Either Leslie was seriously out of the loop, or someone wasn't telling the truth. And then we have Betsy Arakawa's death. Honestly, this is where things take a turn into the twilight zone. The official cause of death was a rare rodent-borne illness. Now, I'm no scientist, but that's not exactly something you catch while sipping tea on your patio. Betsy was known to live an extremely private life. She wasn't jetting off to exotic locations or hanging out in unsanitary conditions. She was isolated, living in their high-security New Mexico estate. And yet she contracted a disease so rare, even health officials were scratching their heads. Some experts suggested that the odds of someone in her circumstances catching such an illness were basically like winning the worst kind of lottery. Not impossible, but highly suspicious. And here's where the money comes in. We're not just talking about the kind of wealth that buys a few nice cars. Gene Hackman's estate was worth tens of millions of dollars. Between real estate holdings, movie royalties that would keep paying out long after his death, investments, and an art collection, we're looking at a serious financial empire. After both Gene and Betsy pass away, their daughter Leslie Hackman became the key figure managing this entire fortune. But Leslie didn't waste any time. Witnesses say she started liquidating assets almost immediately. We're talking about luxury properties, art pieces, even personal items from Gene's film career, gone within weeks. And what's more, some of these transactions reportedly happened before probate was finalized. Now, I'm no lawyer, but that's not typically how this works. And this is where a lot of people started asking the big question. Was Leslie just grieving and trying to move on, or was she covering something up? Some conspiracy theories have even suggested that Gene and Betsy Hackman knew too much. And what does that mean exactly? Well, if the rumors are true, Gene had been working on a memoir before his death, a tell-all that was going to pull back the curtain on some of Hollywood's darkest secrets. We're talking about powerful people, the kind you don't cross without consequences. Insiders claim Gene was fed up with the industry, with the corruption and the control that a few shadowy figures have over everything from casting decisions to who stays famous and who disappears. And if Betsy knew what Gene was planning to reveal, that would put her in danger too. It's no secret that Hollywood has its invisible hand, the group of elite power players who pull the strings behind the scenes. They control the money, the roles, the narratives. They decide who gets the multi-million-dollar deals and who becomes a tabloid scandal. And if someone like Gene Hackman, a respected industry veteran with nothing left to lose, decided to call them out, that would be a problem. A big one. And here's another layer to the story. Gene and Betsy's isolation in their final months. Neighbors said they hadn't seen either of them for months, which is odd for a couple that, while private, was still known to engage with their community from time to time. It's almost as if they were hiding out, maybe under pressure, maybe being protected, or maybe they didn't trust anyone anymore. Some sources claim there were unmarked vehicles seen outside their property in the weeks before their deaths. Black SUVs, dark-tinted windows. The kind of thing you see in a spy thriller. Were they private security? Were they watching over the Hackmans or watching them? And then there's the timing. Gene and Betsy died within a short time of each other. Gene's advanced illness was one thing, but Betsy, a sudden mysterious infection at the exact same time? That's either the most tragic coincidence in Hollywood history or something much more calculated. And here's the thing about money, power, and influence. It doesn't just protect people. It can silence them, too. If Gene and Betsy Hackman were planning to expose something, or even if they might have been perceived as a threat, the Hollywood machine has a long history of shutting down those stories before they ever get told. And who benefits most from their sudden deaths? Leslie Hackman. She steps into a multi-million-dollar inheritance, controlling everything her parents built over their lifetimes. She controls the narrative. She holds the keys to the Hackman legacy. And if there were any secrets left behind, she'd have the ability, and maybe the motivation, to make sure they never see the light of day. So where does this leave us? We have a Hollywood icon who spent his last years in mysterious isolation, suffering from illnesses his own daughter denied knowing about. We have his wife dying of a disease so rare it made headlines in the medical community. We have an estate rapidly liquidated, and rumors of a tell-all memoir that has since disappeared. And we have conspiracy theories that point to the invisible hand of Hollywood, silencing yet another voice before it could speak out. It's a tangled web, and at the center of it, money, power, and influence, the forces that have always ruled Tinseltown, and just might have cost Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa their lives. Now, let's talk about what everyone else is saying. The internet has not been quiet about the mysterious deaths of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa. If you thought people were just going to send their condolences and move on, nope. This has turned into an obsession, and honestly, I get it. The minute the news broke about Gene Hackman's death, people were heartbroken. I mean, this man was a legend. He was in so many of our favorite films and was considered one of the most respected actors in the game. But then, when the details started trickling out, the fact that he'd been suffering from advanced Alzheimer's and multiple heart attacks, which his daughter Leslie Hackman claimed she had no clue about, people's spidey senses activated. Like, how do you not know your dad's health is in a serious downward spiral? Especially if you say you're super close and you visit all the time? Fans were all over social media pointing out the huge discrepancies between Leslie's public statements and the medical reports. Reddit threads blew up. TikTok sleuths were breaking it all down, side by side, like this was a true crime docuseries. And I don't blame them. This is giving major something doesn't add up energy. But it wasn't just about the inconsistencies. It was about the money. Honey, because whenever there's a fortune involved, and trust me, Gene Hackman's estate was worth tens of millions, people get shady. Fans started digging into how fast Leslie Hackman was selling off assets. Properties, artwork, personal items. It was like a fire sale over there. And folks were asking, why the rush? What's the hurry if you're just settling your parents' estate? Unless, maybe you're trying to erase something. And when it came to Betsy Arakawa, the public reaction was even more intense. People were like, hold up, she died from what? A rare rodent-borne illness? In her multi-million-dollar, tightly secured mansion in Santa Fe? The online reaction ranged from confused to straight-up suspicious. One Twitter user said, it's like something out of a Hollywood script. Oh, wait. And honestly, they're not wrong. The conspiracy theories blew up after that. YouTube channels started pumping out Gene Hackman scandal update videos like hotcakes. Some folks think Gene and Betsy Hackman were silenced because they knew too much. But what does that mean exactly? Well, Rumor has it Gene was sitting on a tell-all memoir, ready to spill Hollywood's dirtiest secrets. Imagine the kind of powerful people who wouldn't want that book to see the light of day. We're talking about the Hollywood elite, the people who have built empires on staying in control and keeping their money and influence intact. And you know how Hollywood works. When someone steps out of line, the machine moves fast. Celebs go from the top of the A-list to we don't know her overnight. Now imagine what happens when a legend like Gene Hackman decides to expose the underbelly of it all. Some fans are convinced that's exactly what went down. And Betsy? Maybe she knew too much by association. But here's where it gets extra juicy. People have been side-eyeing the Hollywood silence. Usually, when a major figure like Gene Hackman passes, you get floods of tributes, heartfelt posts, memorials from co-stars and directors. This time, crickets, a few generic statements, but no deep reflections, no tearful interviews. Some fans noticed that his old colleagues were strangely quiet. One Redditor posted, "It's like they were told not to say anything. Yo, what if they were?" And while we're on the topic, the neighbors in Santa Fe also had something to say. Reports started coming out that Gene and Betsy hadn't been seen for months before they passed. Some even mentioned seeing black SUVs parked outside the state. Not unusual in LA, but in a sleepy part of New Mexico, kinda SUS. Were they private security? Surveillance? Something darker? People are still debating it. Now, not everyone's buying into the conspiracy angle. Some folks argue that this was just a tragic end to two private people who lived out their last years quietly. They say Leslie Hackman was just doing what she thought was best, managing the estate quickly because, well, the legal process can be a mess. And as for Betsy's illness, we will just have to make our own conclusions. Like and subscribe.